Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is my pleasure to be surrounded here by these panelists. We are going to get in just momentarily. I just wanted to thank everyone. My name indeed is Kim Richmond from the Richmond Law Group. We run a social justice law and policy firm in Harlem, New York, DC, and San Francisco. It is frankly great that I'm surrounded by advocates in their own right. Each of us brings something different to the table and have been, frankly, canaries in the coal mine for quite some time. Unfortunately, a lot of the public health issues we've been tracking for decades has now come to the level of public safety concerns, especially in the face of this pandemic. And I know each and every one of us are interested in reducing the toxic load that we have upon our bodies, on our children, on our environment. And now it's time more than ever for us to do. And speaking of canaries in the coal mine, right, and the issue of petrochemicals that we're going to be discussing today, from flame retardants to PFAS and beyond, if not for, right, the fossil fuel industry, perhaps there will be less petrochemicals throughout our bodies and our environment. And I do hope, in the spirit of Rachel Carson, we can take a systems-based approach, a multifaceted advocacy approach, and working together here today and beyond in terms of addressing these issues. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Ann Robertson. Welcome, Ann.
Yes, hi. My name is Ann Reynolds Robertson. I'm excited to kick off this panel discussion of incredible, like-minded folks, all of us working hard to reduce the toxic levels of chemicals, especially Ed Brown and his film, Advance Warning, like his other films, have been raising the alarm bells about the harm these chemicals, this chemical, particularly brominated flame retardants, PFAS, and a few others, are causing and creating and wreaking havoc in the health of all of us, but especially our children. I've recently created a nonprofit called A Toxic-Free Future for Our Children to help facilitate and create collaborative initiatives like this panel discussion with the folks with Kim Richmond and the Richmond Law Group. That includes a cross-disciplinary group of individuals who share the goal of creating a healthier, less toxic, and more just future for us all, but especially our children. Now I'd like to introduce Amy Ziff. She is founder of Made Safe. Amy will be the moderator for today's panel discussion. Made Safe is one of the most trusted non-toxic certification programs and is America's first comprehensive human health ecosystems-focused certification to non-toxic products across the entire store aisle, from baby products to personal care to household items and beyond. I'm also proud to be on Amy's board. I'm a big fan of the work Amy is doing, and every single one of these panel members. They're incredible, and I'm excited to kick this off. So Amy.
Thank you, Ann. We so appreciate your time, attention, and value all of the work that you do. And you are an amazing connector and are probably the way I know quite a few of the people here today. So thank you for that. I'm really excited to be here and share such a knowledgeable group with you. I hope that many of you have had the chance to watch Ed Brown's film, Advance Warning. It is, if you have watched it, all about flame retardants and what we're going to be speaking to you all about today, and kind of the why do you care? What is a flame retardant? It's a class of chemicals that are supposed to keep things from burning, but what does that mean to me, right? You will leave knowing a lot more about flame retardants than maybe you ever thought possible. And I'm excited to kind of bring that home with this incredibly talented group. You know, the average person, modern living person, spends about 90% of their time indoors. that was before this pandemic started. I bet we're all spending even more time indoors now. And the EPA has said that air pollution, indoor air pollution, is a pressing national concern because indoor air can be 100 times more polluted than outdoor air. And one of the reasons for that is because we are surrounded by synthetic man-made chemicals, including flame retardants. And so I'm excited to talk to you about this today because I think education is the first step. With knowledge, we can empower ourselves to create change, and we need to create a lot of change. So I'm super excited to introduce you to our panel and to have this incredible change makers, each one of them introduce themselves very briefly, and then we'll kick it on to conversation that I will guide. So I'm going to ask for a quick intro, and Ed, why don't you lead that way?
Thank you so much, Ann and Amy. I really appreciate this. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm so grateful to be here indoors like everybody else and trapped around all these flame retardants. My name is Ed Brown. I'm the film director and producer of Advanced Warning. This was a 3-year process of creating this film. It was a lot of hard work, and I got to learn so much about this amazing topic, and I really hope everybody enjoyed the film and got a lot out of it. I've made a number of films, and Unacceptable Levels was my first one about toxic chemicals, and I thought it was so much fun, I might as well make another film about toxic chemicals, and more specifically, and that's what I do. So I'm trying to make the world a better place, just like the rest of us, and you know, that's what this is all about. So thank you, Amy. I really appreciate it. Let's continue.
All right, great. And if you haven't watched the film, you can go to Vimeo and you can watch it. We'll put a link in the chat so that you can see the film. It will be without a password, that you can watch it for the next week or so. So make sure to do it quickly. And with that, let's introduce Bobby Wilding. Take it away, Bobby.
Hi, I'm Bobby Wilding. I'm the Deputy Director of Clean and Healthy New York, and I am also the Director of the National Getting Ready for Baby campaign, which is focused on getting the retail space to be safe and healthy as far as what products are made for babies. And overarchingly, we're working to protect people and the planet from by making toxic chemical our vanity best. And work, ranges from focusing on policy and changing the marketplace, and also educating folks so that they can be better able to engage in both of those processes. And I'm really glad to be here with all of you. I really appreciate the space to be able to, and time to be able to talk about these important issues. Thanks,
Thank you.
Amy. Thanks,
Bobby. Yeah, you guys are doing really important work fighting at that legislative level, as well as doing the advocacy, which is the perfect entree to our next panelist, Leah Segedy. Please take it away.
Thanks. My name is Leah Segedy. I have a lot that I do, so I'm just going to basically say that I work as a consumer watchdog for family, safeguarding hormonal health and the planet, and I do that through Mamavation.com, our award-winning website. I also have the Mamavation Influencer Network with over 10,000 influencers working on topics like this. I founded the ShiftCon Social Media Conference, which is where the influencers gather to talk about these topics, and then I wrote the book Green Enough, which came out 3 years ago. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Leah, for all the work that you are doing to help us all. We need every one of you and more, right? So that brings us to another panelist, Barry Chick. Please, Barry, take it away.
Hi, I'm Barry Chick, Naturepedic, organic mattresses and bedding. I'm really astounded and very pleased to be part of a group like this. You're looking at some of the top people in the country, and every one of them is great on their own. But when you work together as a team, we can start building and really accomplishing things. I mean, my goal, to be very honest about it, is to replace the entire chemical system in this country. If you make chemicals, you have no right to make a chemical until you can prove that it's safe. You have no right to make a chemical until you can prove that it's safe. We're a long way from that, but that's the goal here. Personally, I'm a board certified environmental engineer. I've been chasing chemicals for 40 years or so. I'm certified by the Institute of Professional Environmental Practice. I'm a certified hazardous materials manager. I'm an author of a textbook for government institutes. I'm a diplomat certified forensic engineer, and I'm certified by the Ohio EPA and whatever. I got into this because my wife sent me to a baby store to buy a crib mattress for our first grandchild 17 years ago. And I walk in and forget it. I couldn't believe what I saw. So here we are.
Thank you. I sleep on a Naturepedic mattress. I think probably most of the people speaking here today do, and you're single-handedly changing an industry. And Barry's featured in the film, as are many of the people speaking today. So thank you for that. And as a business, you play a very different role than what Bobby and Leah and Ed are doing. So that's the perfect kickoff to our next and final panelist, David Levine, who I will let take it away and explain what he does.
Great. So I am David Levine, co-founder and president of the American Sustainable Business Council, which is a coalition of business organizations and responsible companies like Naturepedic, that are not only doing the right things within their companies, but are actually doing advocacy and public policy work. And we are basically raising up the voice and power of businesses on a range of issues, from safer chemicals to circular economy, regenerative ag, sustainable packaging, high road business, race and equity, climate change, and more. And so it's crucial. Business has been a part of the problem, but with responsible business, we can be a leader on the solution. So we're thrilled to be a part of this effort together.
Thank you, David, and thank you for working to make sure that other businesses are heeding this call and taking the opportunity. And I do think that in the frame of this conversation, sometimes I forget that when you're learning about these issues, it can be kind of terrifying because we've all been so steeped in this stuff for so long. But at Made Safe, the organization that I run, we are all about empowerment, empowering choices. So I spoke earlier saying, I believe that knowledge is power, because knowledge is the key to leading you to be able to make educated choices and different choices and to help shape the marketplace. Companies won't make products if we don't buy them. And if we have the knowledge about what's in them, we can get them to change. And I think that's the beauty of what advance warning is ultimately telling us. I probably have different about film, but it really is about giving us this information, and this really horrible information about what we don't see, smell, or taste that is in every room in our homes, from the things that we've willingly bought and brought in. I always say chemicals are like the uninvited guests to the party, but they're here. And it's up to us to start to get them to go away so that eventually we can see more legislation. We're going to talk about each one of those issues. But what excites me, and as opposed to depressing me about this, is that studies have shown that it's possible to reduce your body burden from these and other chemicals simply by practicing avoidance. If you don't encounter the chemical, then body until getting rid of it. And at Made Safe, we talk a lot about how to help companies guide them in that direction, and then to give that information to consumers. So you can learn more about that at madesafe.org. But really here today, we're going to talk about why we care, why are we passionate about these invisible invaders into our home? And I guess, for me, it kind of comes down, it's simply this, these flame retardants have been found in most humans and most species, from Arctic creatures to our babies. They are born pre-polluted, and it can be measured in your urine according to, biomonitoring studies. We all contain these chemicals. Why? How did they get here? Where do they come from? And I think those are the questions that Ed covered in his film, and I'd love to tackle that topic a little bit with you, Ed. Like, what made you, why this film? You've made some other films. They've all been circling around this arena that we're passionate about, collectively around toxics. But, why spend time educating and talking about and advancing this conversation on flame retardants? Why did it appeal to you?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Amy. And I would always sit back and say, well, it's a class of chemicals that I didn't focus on all that much whenever I made my first film. But then whenever I was taking a closer look at it, I couldn't believe how omnipresent these were, meaning they're absolutely everywhere. And why wouldn't we be having this conversation if you've got toxic chemicals that you're surrounded by all the time, every single day? And especially babies, whenever it comes to children and their exposures to these toxic chemicals, and knowing that they're much greater in babies than they are even in adults, I thought, wow, that sounds like a pretty big problem. And I thought, why not just sit back and really focus on that as a big issue that we have to illuminate? Because if you don't know anything about it, you're not going to care. And if you don't care, then nothing's going to happen. And that's kind of where we're at. So whenever we sit down on a couch, whenever we lay down on a bed, whenever we sit down in our cars, stuff with padding, I couldn't believe all of it has flame retardants. And to know how it got there was a fascinating story of how the tobacco industry plays a big role in this. And we all want to prevent fires. And that's true. Absolutely. You have to say, of course, nobody wants to be in a tragic fire. And how best can we prevent that? But knowing that these flame retardants are put onto products that are made from petroleum, we're sitting in a tinderbox. And you know, the video that we watch it's even in the film that Underwriter Laboratories did, where they show a legacy house in the modern homes we live in. And to see the stark contrast and the absolute difference between the two is really just, it's terrifying. So anyway, so I thought if flame retardants are enough of an issue to talk about, why not make a documentary exposing this issue? So I thought it is, in truth, is stranger than fiction, and it is a fascinating story.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating story. And I love how, you know, so many evil things end up sort of tracing back to the cigarette manufacturers and the games that they played that now others take a page out of their playbook, so to speak, to get their chemicals and their products into the hands and arms and homes of all of us. So yeah, thank you. I'm glad it caught fire, so to speak, with you. And what do you want, if you were to summarize, like, for people, what is the thing that you most want people to take away from the film, Ed? Like, what is it that you hope it will spark? Another pun.
I love awareness as much as anyone else. Awareness is a key component to solving an issue or solving a problem personally. What I'd like people to get from this is that here's information you may not have had. I presented it in the most honest way that I could possibly do it. And now that you have that information, it's going to be up to you, and it's up to legislators, and it's up to scientists, and it's up to the industry, that we have to make changes. And if we don't make changes, that's the action part that comes to awareness. We have to make changes. They can be sudden, they can be incremental, they can be long-term, but all of those are absolutely necessary. That's how big this issue is. We're talking about a chemical that is as toxic as lead when it comes to IQ inside of our children. And to me, I don't know, if we're not trying to protect each other and protect ourselves, and especially protect the most vulnerable among us, what are we trying to protect? And these are, as you said so well, these are uninvited guests, and that's exactly what this is. I never expected this. So raise awareness, but we really have to take action. That's the next logical step.
Thank you. And I am excited to talk about action and some of those opportunities and how that really, how those things are interwoven. And so I'd love to talk with Bobby Wilding next. Thank you, Ed. We'll come back to you. Bobby worked tirelessly to get, harmful chemicals banned. And you work here in New York, and you've had many successes, and I'm sure many sad days too, where your legislation gets killed, doesn't make it to the floor. But you know, you recently had success with PFAS and footwear, and I think that, you know, that's really telling about how you start to make traction. But you also have a new crib mattress report. And I think that that's even more relevant to this conversation because it makes the issue of flame retardants top of mind for all of us. So can you talk a little bit about that campaign, but also, I guess, linking the relationship between a campaign and then legislation? Kind of take us through a little bit about that, because that's, as I see it, how your work, you know, really is solidified.
Yeah, absolutely. So the report that we released very recently is called The Mattress Still Matters. It's a follow-up to a report we did back in 2011 in collaboration with the American Sustainable Business Council back in 2011, and through our National Getting Ready for Baby campaign this year. And we looked at over 200 crib mattress models and what manufacturers and brands were saying about them on their websites. We wanted to understand what a new mom or an expectant aunt, you know, like who's out there looking for this information and what could they find out. And then we also tested in collaboration with the Ecology Center, the 13 of those crib mattress models. And it used to be really common back in 2011 for the polyurethane foam inside crib mattresses to have those PBDEs and other toxic flame retardants in them. And we're seeing a trend away from that, which is great. But we still found that 7 out of the 13 products that we tested had brominated, chlorinated, or phosphorus-based flame retardants in them, which means there's still a lot of work to do. And so the way that the Getting Ready for Baby campaign works is we are working to get the country's remaining baby product chain, Bye Bye Baby, which is owned by Bed Bath & Beyond, to get rid of toxic chemicals in their products. And they've actually taken a stand on flame retardants in children's products, saying that they won't sell products that are made for babies and toddlers that contain flame retardant chemicals. And they have a list of chemicals that flame retardants that they won't allow in any of the products that they sell. And that's a result of our advocacy. So we've been working to get them to make those changes. But then we also partnered that with policy advocacy, because to us, you know, one of the things that we found in the report is that there are fully 10 brands that are making crib mattresses today without flame retardant chemicals, and many of those have been formulated without any petrochemicals, which is exciting. That's progress, and we see that. And when companies, like you'll hear from Naturepedic, from Barry, you know, when companies make those kinds of changes, they tell us what's possible, right? They open up this new vista of what the world could be like in some really important ways. And so that leadership, that market leadership, when companies step out to the front, creates a space in which you can say, look, it's doable. We can make these products safer. And then there are companies that don't want to do that, right? And so the way I view it is that our work with policy is to really raise the floor, right? So market leaders raise that ceiling of what's possible, and then policy advocacy can raise the floor so that everyone is more protected. And so in addition to getting a law called the Child Safe Products Act passed last year here in New York State, we also have a bill sponsor in the Senate for one bill that would ban flame retardants in children's products and all children's products and a number of other product categories. And we view that as sort of creating that floor again, right? Raising that floor so everyone is healthier. And really it's sort of like a 1-2 punch, right? As the market moves ahead, then policy can come up behind and sort of lock in those wins so that we don't slide backwards as public attention wanes. So that's really how we do that that sort of two-step as the sort of the way I think about it. And for folks that are interested in learning more about the Mattress Still Matters, I'm putting a link to the report in the chat. So feel free to go check it out.
And Bobby, it's so interesting because you talked about the work with the retailers and how that, you know, relates to the work with the brands. the role of states and the state policy as vis-a-vis national policy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think that when I started this work almost 20 years ago, the thought about states was that they were essentially like laboratories, and they would try different and novel initiatives to solve problems, and then the best of those could get pushed up and passed on the federal level. And while that is still true, I think there's also a real role that we see now as the current administration is rolling back, attempting to roll back 100 environmental regulations, that where states have come in and passed stronger laws, they end up being safeguards too, because companies want to meet the most stringent standards in the country. They don't want to produce different products for California or New York or, like they have a product set that helps serve as a backstop as well, so that we can continue moving forward even in challenging times at the federal level, and we can have some of those protections stay in place at that time as well. So I think it's also really powerful to have state policy help drive the desire for a national policy, and so those both work together.
Yeah, I mean, especially in an administration like this one, where we're not going to see policy advanced in terms of environmental health, at least at the national level, anytime soon. So, it strikes me that those state level policies are really crucial, especially in a state as big as New York, California, Minnesota. Lots of states have been active, but when you get a large state doing that, then that really impacts manufacturers' policies. So
yep, absolutely.
Super, super helpful. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you too, Bobby. But let's go from there to talk about, there's sort of this arc, right, of what we're talking about. Ed's made this film to create awareness, and then, we may not as citizens realize how these things all kind of intersect and how they work. But it goes from, awareness and Bobby working on advocacy and education and really priming policy so that, and companies to show, as I always say, like, we don't see policy changes until enough companies have stood up and said, like, yeah, okay, we can do this. And so we need to move it at every level. And so you move from thinking about companies and brands and retailers and policy to someone like Leah, who has the ears of not just consumers, but she influences the influencers. She's sharing this information that we will ultimately, that people will ultimately get and hear. And in this day and age where people are getting a lot of their news is frankly online. So Leah, you are an influencer's influencer, and and you're educating people, especially moms, because let's face it, moms control the lion's share of the wallet in this country, the spend. That means they are very powerful, whether they know it or not, with what they buy. And you have your finger on the pulse of how to talk to them and what's important. So I'd love, you can talk about many issues, but why is this one, I keep going back to that, like, why is this one important to you?
So fire retardants are one of those big, bad, nasty chemicals that I've been really concerned about for a really long time. If you read and read enough, we talked a lot about fire retardants because you're breathing. And when you're breathing air, you're breathing them in. And, my background is I've had 4 very close relatives die of cancer. I have an older son with autism, and I have a younger son with allergies. And I have that cross-section of pretty much a lot of challenges that the modern woman deals with when she's raising a family. And so, women went out there, we went to college, we got all educated, we're raising a family, and now you're telling us we don't get to know what's in the products that you're putting in, that we're having to feed our family and put in our homes. To me, it's kind of like a feminist issue. Tell us what's in it, because it's our job to make sure that we take care of our families. And we can't do that until you give us the information that we need. So I work really closely with the NGOs and with the scientists and with all of these people that are doing these studies and research projects. And I kind of put it together in a way that it's got background information so people can make sense of it, and then gives them very, very actionable advice. Like, here's the bad brands, here's the better brands, here's the best brands. Now, which one do you want? You know what I'm saying? And the better and the best is usually where people want to be. The better, probably because they have easier access to it. It's more, it's affordable or easier access. The best is for people, you know, who really want to be getting the best that they possibly can. Typically, those people have more money to spend as well. So what we try to do is make it as simple as possible. And then when I work with influencers, it's like having that conversation, like, ladies, come on. You know, this is about our families, but they're hiding these things from us. And is it fair? No, it's not fair. We can work together to make sure that transparency is focused on. And honestly, to be quite honest about it, the influencer's role in this sense is to direct resources towards the good guys and away from the bad guys. And they do that just by sharing their experiences and sharing some plan. That's all it needs to be. Other women and other influencers look and say, yeah, that makes sense. So you've got this like sleeping giant, so to speak, of moms, right? And we saw them start to activate during labeling GMOs when I was the one who organized 650 influencers across the country to talk about that. And we were the sleeping giants. We exploded. It was all about transparency. Transparency to me is a feminist issue. You know, a lot of the women see it that way, or they don't understand, but they'll put the pieces together very quickly. But that part, moving the market and making sure that women know the truth and they know what to buy and what not to buy, that's powerful because that moves the market very quickly.
Yeah, and using the market as a lever is so important because it goes back to that companies will make what we buy. And when we're buying their crappy stuff, then we're saying we want more. And that's the American way. Yeah, and I think also the point that you, transparency is so crucial. Sometimes, most of the time, and until TB 113, and we don't have to get into it in the California law in such technical terms, but until then, you didn't know if something contained flame retardants because there was no real labeling for that. So you were looking for, and I still shop this way, I still look for clues, like, do these pajamas, what are they made of? Is that gonna require a flame retardant? And does it have that little yellow tag saying it's highly flammable and don't be near an open flame because it hasn't had flame retardants? And, you know, all of those kinds of things. So will you tell us what what is your advice to all those people who might be scared from this conversation or like, oh crud, I don't know where to do, like, you know, how do we deal with it? Because there's that macro level, like we've got to get involved and create change at the governmental level, but I want to create change in my own home. So how do I do that? How do you advise people?
Yeah, so the first thing you can do is just buy better products. And, you know, if you go to mamavation.com, we literally have everything busted out, bad, better, best for everything you could buy. So please use me as a resource for that. But the second thing, buy better products. When it comes to your mattress, you know, and those kind of things, I've talked to a lot of people who can't afford a new mattress or can't afford new furniture. And that's where there's a lot more advice you can give. And for that, get a mattress cover, because those allergy friendly mattress covers really help with off-gassing, but that's not going to get everything. But what I would really focus on, if you don't have a lot of money, is dusting. There was actually a study that came out in 2017 with the Journal of Exposure Science. And what they found was that if you do a lot of dusting in your home, in about a week or two, the amount of fire retardants you'll be exposed to goes down by about half. So they want you to do dusting, start with the top and then go down to the bottom, because remember, things go down to the bottom. So start at the top, going down at the bottom, make that more of a weekly thing, and then wash your hands before you eat. And that's really important too, because remember, you're getting it on your hands, you're eating, you're putting it in your mouth. So especially make sure you wash your hands before you're eating, you're dusting from top to bottom. When you're buying new products, think about fire retardants and perfluorinated chemicals when you're buying them. Look at mamavation.com. We'd love to be a resource for you. And just, you know, be a little bit more aware and spread the news. I mean, that's what we can really do right now.
Super helpful of just like, okay, I'm getting my head around this, but what do I do? And those, you know, those tips of how to clean in your home and just to factor in these things, and using, when you get to the floor, using a damp cloth as opposed to a dry to really capture and not set them all, you know, into the air again, is, it doesn't cost anything. I mean, the cost is our time, but it's so valuable and it reaps rewards. So that's really super useful. So thank you for that. And I also would love for you to talk about the accountability and that piece too, because I think that's so crucial. You do things when you're listing and you're doing your good, better, best, you're kind of calling, well, you call people out, you call companies out, you name names. And I think it's a very effective tool. Why is accountability so important?
Well, I mean, when you call people out on the carpet and you name names, nobody can hide, and that person, I just like doing that. That's kind of how I feel about it. I like drawing a line in the sand and saying, you guys are not my favorite. I'll be very, very verbal about that and very, loud about that. Here's the guys that I think are awesome. And here's the guys I think are elite, and so you go where you feel your pocketbook and your family can handle. And that's always the end of the day. What you want to do is transparency is key, because that's how you respect people. And that's really how you respect women in particular, because women have to do all of the shopping and cleaning. And I know that, things are balancing out with the sexes, but we still have the overwhelming burden of feeding and caring and all of that thing. So respect us by giving us transparency, and then we can make our own decisions based on that. And transparency, again, is key. And that's, that is not going to go away. So these companies who are hiding, just hoping that it will go away, it's not going to go away. It's here to stay. So the companies that are on board with transparency get to be in our angel category, and the ones that don't, we're just going to keep throwing rocks at them.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? I mean, like, I've got the biggest mouth, so.
Which is the perfect segue into talking about a company. I want to talk about Naturepedic and Barry Chick. And, if I could, I would get down and do this. And you might say, why am I bowing to Barry? And full disclosure, I work with Barry. All of his products are Made Safe certified. I sleep on a Naturepedic mattress, but, he's changed the game. And that's why it's worthy of a bow, because he didn't say, okay, I'll settle for better. He went into that best category. He went into doing something differently, and he leapfrogged the entire mattress industry forward. And we will be paying him a debt for the rest of our lives, and even for our children, in terms of the changes he is introducing. And it's hard to be a change maker. It is hard to be a salmon swimming upstream. He makes it look easy. But he's really shown what's possible. And he said, you can disclose these materials, you can disclose what you are doing, you can make a better mattress, you can make one that's comfortable, you can make one that's, well, super excited, Barry, to dive in with you on this. And not only that, we know, now you've made these incredible mattresses with Naturepedic and set a new bar for the industry about what it looks like to make an organic, non-toxic mattress without flame retardants. But you did it because you understood these chemicals. So talk to us a little bit about that, about the variety and kinds of different flame retardants and chemicals that are in the marketplace, and how they might be toxic, and why that said to you, like, oh, hello, opportunity.
Thank you. There are many flame retardants out there, even to the point of hundreds. Flame retardants out there. So there's a couple points here. On one side, there's certain flame retardants that are more common, the halogenated, the ones that are made with bromine or chlorine, and then the phosphorus. Then there's antimony, highly toxic, and modacrylic, polyacrylonitrile, highly toxic. And a lot of those have been studied, and we know they're toxic. Most of them are carcinogens, okay? But now there's another point that I'm going to shock you with, and that is the bigger issue in this context is that there are no rules for manufacturers. Okay, they don't have to test their products. That's the problem. Okay, so not half the products, but most of the products out there, most of the chemicals out there, have never really been tested. They've been tested a little bit, this, that, but there's no requirement. And just to put it in context so everybody understands what's going on, there's one law that tells manufacturers they have to identify their chemicals and anything that's potentially harmful, and that's the OSHA law. Okay, every factory, if they're making chemicals, they have to issue a document that explains everything, an SDS safety data sheet. But there's one big loophole. The one big loophole from Congress is that if you don't know about something, you don't have to put it on your MSDS. So guess what? Most of the factories out there, most of the manufacturers, they don't want to test. They don't want to know. Okay? So what kind of ridiculous society is this? Okay? They don't want to know, and they don't have to know. And then you're not going to know. So that's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is not how much we do know so far, and we know a fair amount. The bigger problem is how much we don't know. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that it's terrifying when you realize we don't know, we haven't tested. People presume that the stuff that they're buying in the marketplace has been evaluated somewhere, and are always shocked to hear that truth, that there are over 85,000 chemicals in use today, most without any studies. They're released, and some of them are in your mattresses. And you said, many are carcinogenic. They're oftentimes derived from petroleum, and they are highly flammable. So what's the deal on this flammability? Do these flame retardant chemicals actually buy us more time?
No, so it's all a big fraud. So now let's talk about something else, which the public needs to understand in a general way, but it's critical. And that is, in your great-grandparents' days, you walked into their home, it was all wood, steel, cotton, wool, whatever, natural stuff. Today, open the door to your house, walk in, and just stop and look. Most of it is going to be petroleum. We are living in a petroleum world. It's a different world than it used to be, okay? And among other problems, and there are many other problems, but among them, petroleum is highly flammable. So we're living in a very highly flammable world, okay? When there was a fire 100 years ago, you yelled and you screamed, and you got everybody out of bed down steps, on TV or the newspaper, everybody's dead. Everybody's dead. Everybody's dead. They died from the toxic fumes. Okay, what do you expect? What do you expect? Okay, if polyurethane foam or any other or petroleum burns, you got a problem. Certainly, if it's polyurethane foam, you got a serious problem. You don't have time. So the flame retardants that they're using don't even help. Okay, take a gallon of gasoline and light it. Put all the flame retardants you want in there. Give me a break. You're gonna hold back the flames for 10 seconds. That's it. I mean, it's a joke. It's all a big joke. And they're creating standards to make it look like everything is okay. Everything is safe. Everything is there. It's all.
And those fumes, those smoldering fumes from those are insidious and dangerous, and highly, highly toxic when the wool or the cotton or the wood doesn't produce the same kind of poisonous smoke. So yeah, we have a hot load of toxins on our hands, and firefighters are even starting to talk about that. And that's why I think so many businesses have to start to follow your lead. We need them to say, okay, there's another way. And that's where David comes in. I'd love, David, for you to talk about the role and the responsibility. Why should businesses care? They aren't mandated to have to use better chemicals. So why does anyone have to care?
Well, first of all, Barry and, other companies out there that we would consider responsible, sustainable, just smart businesses, been working for decades of being able to sort of prove the fact that you could produce safer, healthier products from non-toxic chemicals. And what has been clear is that they've been able to prove that fact. If you go through every product category area, there's been incredible innovation. That's what business does really well. They know how to sort of invent what needs to get invented. Why? Because there's a market for it out there. As Leah was talking, as others are talking, parents don't want to walk into a store and buy a toxic product to poison their family. Come on. So the companies that, are producing these safer products are seeing their market share grow. And then you're seeing more and more companies actually adopt, either not full force sometimes, but either buying out smaller companies that produce the safer, healthier products, or producing a line of products. So they have some green or safer products. But what we're talking about here is if it's been proven, then what we need to do is go the full length and actually just set that as the bar, that all products need to be produced, as we would say, with a little bit of understanding of until it's proven safe, we shouldn't have it on the marketplace, right? And, and that's a piece of the responsibility. But what we're also saying is that, the fact that these companies have been able to do it, has been met by the challenge of those that are sticking to the status quo. The petrochemical lobbyists in industry has been a major force, whether it's the American Chemistry Council, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, or others, they've been holding fast that, this is the direction we need to stick with. And that is why we formed the American Sustainable Business Councils, because we knew we needed to mobilize business voices into a power so collectively we could say, excuse me, but that's an old way of thinking. That's built on short-term profit at all costs, and we can create, an economy built on businesses, doing well by doing good, by thinking about people, planet, profit, and that's what the market trends are showing, is that those markets are growing. You hear more and more businesses talking about a stakeholder economy instead of a shareholder economy. But for us, this gets proven out when businesses are actually out there advocating and in public being transparent, right, as we talked about earlier. And two is actually advocating for the public policies, because we're watching companies that are producing some green products that at the same time either supporting directly the trade associations that work to undermine the public policies that Bobby talked about at the state level or at the national level, or are actively using their own lobbyists to do that. A responsible company now has to do both: produce the safer products and stand up in public and engage in the public policy in a way that aligns then with moving us towards a safer, healthier economy.
Yeah, it does seem like we're at this inflection point where there are companies who are doing that, and it's exciting to see them. And I think that because of the work that one of the organizations, as well as the fact that, individuals and influencers, people in Leah's network and beyond are saying, this is not okay, same old won't work. And then companies like Barry's showing these things are possible. It is possible to do things differently. And so it's amazing, David, that you have hundreds of organizations who are standing up and saying, despite the fact that it isn't cheaper or better for business from just a bottom line perspective to do this, it is better for business because it is better for humanity, and we're going to see this change and stand up and fight for it because we need that. That's the perfect storm. Well, and hopefully we're in a moment of time where we can start to see some of that take place.
But part of the reason why some of the products may show up as more expensive has to do with what we call the externalizing of cost out there, that the other companies that are producing toxic materials, chemicals, products and the like, are in essence dumping that onto society to bear the burden of that cost, whether it's the health costs to our economy and society, it's the cleanup costs, et cetera. So it's less expensive if you actually count the true costs that we're all paying for these products in your life, which in large part is, so once we, so we are actually, so at ASBC, we're advocating on two levels. One is to advocate for the incentives to have businesses, so whether it's through procurement at any level from institutions to government, to actually drive on procuring safer chemicals and products, to tax incentives, just run through the list of incentives that could be provided, over to having businesses actually advocate for the regulation of toxic chemicals. So we can set clear market signals out there through public policy, because the market will not do this on its own without a public and private sector working together to create this framework.
I totally agree. And I think that's why all of these people, it's great to see people here today interested in learning about this, because we each have a role to play. No matter who we are, no matter what we do and where we sit, we can have influence over this, and especially in this moment in time. So I want to turn it over to people to be able to ask questions. And one thing that we haven't touched on enormously, which it's important to say, especially given where we are in this time, is that this is a racial justice issue. This is definitely impacts socioeconomic groups, certain ones more than others. There are people who can start to buy their way out of this problem, and there are certain people who can't. And it's, education, it goes back to why education and awareness is so important. Share this film, Advance Warning, with others. Let them become aware so they can start looking for opportunities to change their ways, change their habits. I don't know if any of you, maybe Leah or Bobby, have off the top of your head ideas for where people can go for resources and other education beyond your own as well. We might want to just throw those into the chat, even just to share that with people.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is that when it talks to looking around at people of color in the green wellness consumer space, I don't know if you've noticed it, but we're very, very white. And that's actually a big problem. And it's something that we looked at in ShiftCon 5 years ago, wanting to bring more people of color into this conversation so they can lead as opposed to listening. And that is one of the reasons why ShiftCon, I'm no longer the leader there. We now have Ari Adams as the leader of ShiftCon, because we want to be able to address that in the future. And you have to be able to see your leadership to be able to understand that you're welcome. And that was one of the main reasons why I stepped down from ShiftCon, and we're partnering and helping with that process. But at the same time, I think, one of the things that we did this year is we looked into hair relaxers. And between the hair relaxers, the skin brighteners, and the air pollution, people of color are overburdened with these toxins. No wonder we're seeing the COVID rates the way we are. So absolutely 100%, I wanted to recognize that. That's one of the reasons why we do those 3 levels instead of saying bad, just bad, good and bad. But I will say that this particular problem of women of color and families of color, there is that I know of no specific consumer rights organization that looks after your needs. It's a problem, but right now what we're doing, specifically what I'm doing, is mentoring a lot of people and building a lot of partnerships so those women will rise up and help. But I'm gonna recognize that this is a problem that we have, absolutely 100%.
Thank you. Great. And I'm hoping we'll get some more questions out there from you. We did put some resources in the chat, wanting to hear about what impacts you. What burning questions do you guys have? We have just a couple of minutes. So I will kick it off with one here that we've got. I think that, people are asking what's the most important thing to do? Is it more important, and many of you may have thoughts on this, but is it more important to take action in your own home, or is it more important to get involved at sort of a civic level? What would you say, Bobby and Leah, where would you start with that?
So I think it's important for us to take action in our own homes, but to me, the way that we solve the problem for people who don't have the time, energy, haven't come across this, right? They're busy putting food on the table and taking care of their families, is by moving both the market and the policy arena, right? That's how my neighbor up the street who isn't thinking about this at all has their children are safer. And so I think that it's really that we look at how we change society, right, and how we lock in wins for everybody, so that we're going forward, we're all better off. And that's, you know, that's really our theory of change at Clean and Healthy New York, is that, you know, we need to be advancing solutions that benefit everyone and get locked in, and don't require everyone to be, you know, you don't have to have a chemistry lab in your basement, you don't have to have a toxicologist in your pocket, but you can really just, you know, we need to get to a place where you need something for your family, you go to the store and everything you can choose from is inherently safe, right? That's the vision, that's the direction we need to be going. And so that's really where we're trying to get to.
Great, thank you.
One of the things that I would say is the first thing that you can do is support brands that mirror your ideals. And so who those brands are, you talk about them with your friends, make sure your friends buy them. Support the good guys, and they're mirror your idea, you know, non-toxic products, save the earth, or if your ideals are, you know, environmental racism and all those other things, you can find a brand that mirrors your ideals. That's the first thing I would say, because resources is money is power. You want to go down that road. And the second thing I would say is act. You want to vote. Don't forget to vote, ladies. And then advocate. So you want to call your elected officials on the carpet and let them know what you feel. I used to work for elected officials, so I know when there's a lot of people calling them on the carpet, they're getting really, really worried. And then, you know, the last thing is speak your mind, spread this, tell your friends, because we need to reach a tipping point. And until that happens, you won't see as much as the legislation. You'll see it trickling in, but the tipping point and having people agree with you and everyone kind of looking around and saying, yeah, let's do that. That's when the change really, really happens. So work on all of those things at the same time.
Absolutely. That's terrific advice for everyone. And we have some good places for people to look. I think we could have one or two more questions before we run out of time. If there's some more questions out there, please submit them, and just submit them with your name so that we can address you and maybe where you're at. We'd love to share that with the group.
Bobby just put in Black Women of Wellness into the chat. It's www.bwwla.org. I have not worked with them yet, so I'm going to reach out to them and talk to them. Thanks so much for that, Bobby.
We just also added some of our business case materials, which are free for folks to sort of grab and to use out there. And just as you're waiting, you know, there's a couple of bills, you know, before Congress that, you know, are important to look at. There's PFAS bills that are a part of the National Defense Authorization Act that we've been pushing for. It's got some components to actually get the military to clean up its act a bunch. It doesn't go as comprehensively as we want, but it's a start. We also have a sustainable chemistry bill that we've been working on for a number of years. That's also in this defense authorization bill. And the other thing, just to announce, you know, since we're talking a lot about families, is that a bunch of the folks on this call are also a part of an effort to advance a childhood cancer prevention initiative. And we'll be releasing a comprehensive report, you know, the third week of September. You know, so you should be on the lookout, and you could be in touch if you want to receive that report.
Yeah, and I think that this speaks to the fact that we're here today talking about advanced warning, Ed's film on flame retardants, but flame retardants are only one class of chemicals that are in our homes. There are many others, and there are many other things that this is just sort of like the tip of the iceberg. If you start to learn about this, you probably will start to care about pesticides and the use of those in your homes and materials, and the you know, use of other harmful chemicals. And you can learn a lot more about those with Clean and Healthy New York, with Made Safe, my organization, with Mamavation, as an entry point. And if there's anything that we leave you with today, it's that I urge you all to think about, where do your products come from? What are they made out of? Is that something that your body is familiar with and can do something with if it encounters it? You know, what's going to happen? Because that kind of curiosity, that sort of intellectual thought process is what can lead you to making better choices. And sometimes I just say to people, it's as simple as thinking, would my great grandmother have come in contact with this? Because if not, maybe I want to do some digging. Maybe that's where I want to spend some time learning about it, because maybe it isn't the thing that I want to use. And let that be a lead and a guide. It doesn't have to be a ton of work. It can be, if you want it, you know, dive in, but it can be just a simple guidance. So, you know, thank you so much, Kim, for bringing us all together, for the Richmond Law Group, for everything that you do, and for initiating this conversation today. Thank you to Ed for making this incredible film that I think speaks for itself. I hope everybody will go to Vimeo and watch. Thank you, Anne, for being a constant connector and helping people connect all the dots into each one of the speakers. Thank you each for the unique gifts that you bring each and every day to this work. We need more of it. Every organization is worthy of support. So I hope that those of you watching will dive in, get involved, and do what you can.